Once, the world was perceived as flat. For humanity at that time, up and down likely appeared as universally constant and absolute concepts across the entire world. Up was associated with the sky, and down with the ground. Objects fell from up to down. The concept of up and down I'm observing was a universal system constructing the world. However, today's humanity knows that up and down are relative concepts that change according to the observer, just like left and right. Thanks to the observation that the Earth is round. Once, the world was perceived with Earth at its center. For humanity at that time, the notion of a stationary center appeared as an absolute concept constructing the world. Looking at the Earth, seemingly motionless at the center, with everything else moving around it, the idea of a stationary center was seen as a fundamental concept, governing the underlying system of the world. However, today's humanity knows that concepts of center and motion are relative concepts that vary depending on the viewpoint. Thanks to the observation that Earth revolving around the Sun orbiting the galaxy, and the galaxy also moving. Once, geometry was seen as an absolute truth of our world. The rules about space and shapes were thought to be universal and unchanging. But then, the discovery of non-Euclidean geometry, which describes curved spaces, showed us that there are other geometries. This made it clear that the geometry we believed in was not the only one, but just one of many possibilities. Moreover, later on, Einstein's discovery of the general theory of relativity revealed these curved geometries actually better matching the reality of our universe. We can confirm the space in our world is indeed curved and expanding, thanks to the observation of the vast cosmic space. Once, time and space were thought to be fixed and absolute. But today, we know space-time is dynamic. As a result, the previous concepts like now, distance, and simultaneous have become relative, changing based on the observer, much like up and center. These concepts, in extreme terms, do not exist in the world, but are features of our viewpoint, including our perspective, thought system, and culture. In this way, concepts that once seemed absolute have been shattered by the discovery of new viewpoints, and this will probably continue to happen in the future. So, we need to question even the things that seem absolute to us now. From now on, let's start doubting everything together. What if you completely doubted what seems true to you now? You need to question not just that, but the entire system behind it that's guiding your judgment. Thought system, logic system, perceptual system, language system. What if you completely doubted these systems that are the premise of our cognition? You need to dive deeper into the background. These systems are also made up of concepts that are assumed to be true prior to them. Causality, inclusion, order, inverse, synthesis, identity. Each of those concepts is, also, derived from even more fundamental ideas. This process continues. Our current cognitive system is constructed by layering countless concepts. If we're going to question it, we need to start from the very foundation. Let's go deeper. Further down, to the bottom, the root, the center, the origin of all concepts. At the very core of our cognition, what is it that we find? Would Descartes say something like this? I am. Would Nietzsche say something like this? Binary opposition. But what if the concept here were wrong? Or what if it were nothing more than something we created or chose, like left and right, up and down? Even if that were the case, we wouldn't be able to notice it from within this cognitive system. Here is the very point from which we view everything, forming the foundation of all our assumptions. What if we doubt this? Let's step outside this system. To notice, we need to discover a new viewpoint, just as humanity once discovered other planets. So, today, let's imagine other worlds where this foundation is different.
Binary opposition. It's a powerful tool we use every day to understand the world around us. Light and dark. Center and periphery. Subjective and objective. Reality and virtual. Order and chaos. These are all pairs of opposing forces that shape our perception. This logical framework, where we use opposing elements to describe things, is what we call binary opposition. It's so ingrained in how we think that we rarely stop to notice it. But whether we're aware of it or not, we all use this way of thinking automatically. It's embedded in countless everyday concepts. If we look at human history, we can see that binary opposition has been deeply rooted in our culture for centuries. And as time has passed, it's become even more dominant in how we view and understand the world. In the past, there were various frameworks for interpreting reality. For example, the primary colors of light model, which saw color as composed of red, blue, and green, or the ancient five elements theory that saw all matter was made up of wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. But over time, even these frameworks have been replaced by binary opposition framework. Now, all colors are understood as simply longer or shorter wavelengths of light. Sounds are described as higher or lower frequencies of air vibrations. All types of matter, when reduced to their essence, are understood based on the magnitude of specific quantum values. Even concepts like emotions, which are currently understood outside of binary oppositions, are gradually being categorized this way. In the near future, emotions will be explained by the quantity of certain chemicals in the brain, and all thought processes will be seen as neurons switching on or off. Furthermore, all data will eventually be represented as either a 0 or a 1 in binary code on computers. So why has binary opposition become so dominant in human perception? The answer is mathematics. Because mathematics has conquered the way we understand the world. It is the greatest super monster meme ever to descend upon humanity in the history of mankind. Numbers have been with humanity for over 4,000 years. Since then, what began as simple concepts have grown into the vast field of mathematics we know today. Along the way, mathematics has continuously evolved: irrational numbers, imaginary numbers, higher dimensions, and non-Euclidean geometry, just to name a few. But despite all this change, one thing has always remained constant. Numbers have always existed between plus and minus. Today, from the system of mathematics, countless new theories and formulas have emerged across fields like physics, chemistry, and engineering. But no matter how many structures are created, the fundamental building blocks remain the same. Everything boils down to just two elements, plus and minus. In this way, our mathematics is deeply intertwined with binary opposition. The very concept of numbers, the foundation of math itself, can be seen as corresponding to the opposition between plus and minus. If that's the case, we might say that our entire mathematical system was born from the seed of the concept of binary opposition, evolving into a system capable of describing the world from this viewpoint. If we liken it to a living organism, mathematics is the body, and binary opposition its gene. Though the body may change, the core genetic information is passed on. This genetic code of binary opposition has spread throughout human civilization, carried by the body of mathematics. Now, is binary opposition the most fundamental concept in our cognition? That, we don't know. But what we do know is that binary opposition forms the very foundation of modern mathematics. And mathematics, in turn, is the dominant system that governs our modern civilization. If the arrival of mathematics is the origin that has made binary opposition so dominant in our worldview, we have to ask, where did mathematics come from in the first place? Tracing the origins of mathematics may help us uncover the origins of binary opposition itself. And by understanding where binary opposition comes from, we can begin to explore a deeper question. Is binary opposition a universal truth of the world, something that inevitably came to us? Or is it merely one among many possibilities that arrived by chance?
Extraterrestrial life, what kind of mathematics do they have? Is it the same as the laws of physics, or is it as different as language? In contact with aliens, who are completely disparate from us in every aspect, including environment, brain structure, evolutionary history, and civilization. Even the most fundamental mathematical concepts might not be absolute, such as circle and prime number. Their existence doesn't have to fit within the framework of biology as we know it. Imagine beings with self-preservation unlike anything on Earth, replication beyond DNA, and changes driven by unknown causes. What if Darwinian evolution wasn't the only path to intelligence? What if there were other algorithms for the emergence? If the path to intelligence they followed was entirely different from ours, they might possess a type of thinking completely distinct from any life form we know. Imagine intelligent life on unknown planet. Their intelligence is far more advanced than ours. But their perception is limited one dimension only. Does geometry exist for them? Imagine intelligent life on unknown planet. Their civilization is far more advanced than ours. But their perception is limited continuous quantities only. Does integer exist for them? Would someone lacking fundamental concepts end up having an entirely different mathematics, with concepts remaining absent? However, if there were ever actual contact, we would likely come to realize that the one lacking fundamental concepts is us.
Humanity's first contact with another likely won't be with extraterrestrial life, but with our own creations. Right now, these inorganic life forms still use our mathematics. But soon, they will develop their own mathematical system, created from scratch and independent of ours. That moment will mark a singularity in human history. They has a brain structure, an evolutionary history, and a perception system entirely different from any Earth-based life. In the future, when humanity observes their mathematics, we will be making unmistakable contact with the truly other. If our system lacks certain ideas, this contact could be our only chance to recognize those absent concepts. If this happens, through observation of their mathematics, humanity will witness the unknown concept of this concept will exist in their math but be absent from ours, and because of that, there will be no word for it in our current language system. The arrival of whether or not it happens, what it looks like, and how we respond to it, will define a turning point for human civilization. And that moment isn't far off. We need to prepare ourselves for the shock of this future contact. In the meantime, let's try to imagine what kind of new mathematics they might create, and what those new concepts could be that we're currently missing.
As we've seen in the previous sections, our cognitive systems and our current mathematics are not absolute. They're fluid and contingent, rooted in our unique history of evolution, culture, and invention or observation. So, it's inevitable to predict that there are still missing concepts in our current system. The current question is about location. Where could that absence lie? Will new concepts only be added to the edges, or could they emerge anywhere? The most impactful scenario we can imagine would be if strikes at the core of our system. So, what we should think about in this part 1 video is, could be positioned within the binary of binary opposition, which is the theme of this chapter? Is there a possibility that plus and minus could become plus, minus, and in that case, everything in the current system will change. But right now, our mathematics based on plus and minus seem to work perfectly, accurately reflecting the real world. Even so, could another mathematics made up of that contradicts this even exist?
Yes, it's possible. And the reason comes from the very nature of mathematics itself. Our mathematics starts from just a few basic assumptions, called axioms. From these, all the logical operations build up the entire system. Think of it like a bubble. Mathematics forms a limited area based on what can logically be derived from those initial axioms. Beyond that bubble, it doesn't say anything. Now, if you start from a different set of axioms, you get a completely different mathematics. The only condition for it to work is that there's no contradiction within that bubble. There are no other constraints. So, many different kinds of mathematics can exist simultaneously, and they can all be equally valid. Each bubble, born from a different set of axioms, is independent and disconnected. They don't have to relate to each other, and it's perfectly fine for them to contradict one another outside their own frameworks. So, while our current mathematics, based on just plus and minus, forms one valid bubble, another mathematics based on plus, minus, and could also form its own bubble. And the area this new mathematics describes doesn't have to resemble ours at all. Now, let's take a peek into what this new mathematics, built on 3 signs, might look like.
We can't meaningfully describe a mathematics based on three signs with our current understanding because all expression systems we use, our diagrammatic, linguistic, perceptual, and logical systems, are rooted in binary oppositions. However, we can still get an intuitive sense of it by contrasting it with our current mathematics. If we consider all of our mathematics as a straight line, then their math would be a triangle. Imagine a world of thought where there is just one straight line. This line has two vertices. Originally, these two are exactly the same and indistinguishable. They are symmetric. By assigning different symbols to them, symmetry is broken, and a primitive system is born. The two symbols used correspond to the two signs, plus and minus, and the current mathematical world is built upon this as atoms, forming everything. Now, imagine another new world completely unrelated to the previous one. In this world, there is no concept of a straight line, only one triangle. The three vertices of this triangle are originally the same and symmetric. By assigning different symbols to each of them, symmetry is broken, and another primitive system is born. The new mathematical world is built upon this as its atoms, forming everything. And the third symbol needed additionally to make a distinction, that is the third sign. Contrary to its mystery, the concept of third sign is very simple. The definition of third sign is exactly the same as plus and minus, no more no less. There is nothing else. This simplest definition brings the strangest results. The familiar relationship between plus and minus is equally present between minus and third sign, and between third sign and plus. When atoms change, the constructed concepts become something else. Now, numbers are no longer defined by the concept between plus and minus, but by the relationship between three signs. 0 is represented by the complete symmetry of the three signs, while infinity is represented by complete antisymmetry. Since geometry itself changes, this is no longer a triangle, this is a straight line in this math. So, now, the plane looks like this. The cube looks like this. And in this math, the numbers and straight lines from our system no longer exist. This mathematics, made up of three signs, introduces a new form of opposition, no longer binary, but ternary. If we group all the mathematics we know as part of binary opposition mathematics, then this is entirely another variation alongside it, ternary opposition mathematics, independent, a positive, completely different, a whole new mathematical world is born. So, what would the physical world described by this new mathematics look like? Let's imagine a parallel world where this math correspond. In this world, binary oppositions don't exist. There's only ternary opposition. All the concepts we use in physics, built on binary oppositions, would transform into something else, built on ternary oppositions. In this world, when it comes to the concept of orientation, there's not just up and down, but a third element. For the concept of space, there's the center, the periphery, and for time, there's the past, the future, and for size, there's big, small, and on a mirror, there's forward, reverse, and in brightness, there's light, darkness, and for speed, there is fast, slow, and for temperature, there is hot, cold, and for distance, there is near, far, and for quantity, there is more, less, and for rotation, there is clockwise, counterclockwise, and for sides, there is front, back, and for entropy, there is order, chaos, and in physical equations, there are positive numbers, negative numbers, and also, there are real numbers, imaginary numbers, and then there are rational numbers, irrational numbers, and there is zero, infinity, and there is the inside of the universe, outside of the universe, and of the universe. There is the beginning of the universe, the end of the universe, and the of the universe. In dependency, there is inclusion and exclusion, and in causality, there is cause and effect, and in logic, there is true, false, and in existence, there is being and non-being, and
It seems we've ventured too deep. Beyond this point, we can't go further, it's beyond the limits of our imagination. Let's take what we've seen on this journey and return to where this line of reasoning first began. What we are looking at is an imaginary world described by ternary opposition. The reason the concept of ternary opposition exists at the beginning is because we dove into a mathematics based on three signs. Furthermore, that mathematics is just one bubble in the vast logical ocean of possible mathematical systems. And it was imagined as an example of a mathematics that is not based on binary opposition. This view lies outside our mathematics, in the realm of logical possibility. We came here because we wanted to observe a mathematics different from ours. The purpose of observing others' mathematics was to question the idea that our current math is absolute. We doubted our math in order to question the binary opposition it's based on. And the reason we questioned binary opposition was to doubt the roots of our cognition. We questioned the roots in order to challenge the entirety of our cognition, to doubt everything we currently see as obvious. This journey so far has been a simulation of what the world might look like if the foundation of our cognition wasn't absolute. We have imagined the cognition of others that lies outside of our own cognitive system. Along the way, we explored one example, the concept of ternary opposition as an alternative to our binary opposition. But the binary opposition is just one of many potential foundational concepts. It's merely an assumption we made at the beginning as a starting point. The idea that binary opposition lies at the root of our cognition is just one possibility. If we assume another concept as our foundation, countless different worlds could be imagined, each one unique from that new starting point. However, in the end, everything we've discussed so far has been about cognitive and logical worlds. Fiction, really? We imagine a different cognition in others in order to question our own. And the reason we question our own cognition is to question our world. Not the simulated world on the screen, but the world we live in, the one you're in right now as you hear this. Let's move forward. Up until now, we've been discussing things in terms of cognition and logic. From here, let's think about what lies beyond that, the real world, the one that actually exists. Is there a possibility that unknown concepts that lie outside our cognition actually exist? We've already seen that they're logically possible. But now let's go further, considering whether they exist in our physical reality, not just in the realms of mathematical theories, virtual worlds, or other distant universe, but right here in this universe. Let's explore the possibility that those we imagined earlier, may actually exist just here, hidden beyond our perception. Everything we've discussed in the previous chapter, concepts, thoughts, mathematics, physics, language, these are forms of information, not concrete realities. Let's call this realm of non-existence the logical world. On the other hand, let's call the physical world we envision when we think of the universe, the place where you exist, the real world, a realm of reality on the other side of perception. We don't truly know what it looks like, but regardless of its appearance, some form of actual substance beyond the logical world surely exists, as long as you are here. These two facets, the logical world and the real world, what we should now focus on is the relationship between them. In the previous chapter, we saw that the logical world isn't limited to our current framework of cognition but instead expands far beyond, allowing for countless different cognitive systems to exist. These frameworks can contradict each other. In any logical system, the only requirement is internal consistency within their own frame. Within the logical world, as long as a system holds consistent within itself, it's not a matter of one being right and another wrong, rather, all such systems are equally valid and correct. However, for a system to be true as a description of this universe, it must not only be logically correct but also aligned with the reality of the physical world. Since we exist in one particular universe, what matters for cognition is the true in the here and now. And truth is the degree of alignment with the real world. Even if a system exists within the logical world, without a connection to the real world, it becomes irrelevant or simply wrong in relation to reality. For instance, if a ternary opposition system stands logically but doesn't correspond with this universe, it would be a flawed cognitive system for describing reality. In that case, the worldview shaped by ternary opposition that we considered earlier would contradict reality, and the concepts within it would lack existence in the actual world. On the other hand, there's strong evidence that our current cognitive system is connected to the physical world. Current fields like mathematics, physics, chemistry, and engineering provide predictions, discoveries, and explanations for real-world phenomena. Modern cosmology, built on these sciences, has been validated through examinations as a highly accurate worldview for describing the real world. The fact that solutions derived from scientific equations match real-world experimental data gives us the points that have been confirmed to be true. There are many such validated points in our cognitive system. That is why we are convinced that our current cognition is correct. Additionally, since our cognition arose from the real world itself, there's an inherent causal link between the reality we inhabit and our cognition. If intelligence arose as a result of Darwinian evolution, natural selection, it would be unlikely for our perception to be entirely wrong. There would necessarily be a positive correlation between our cognition and the real world because those with a more accurate perception of reality would naturally have a better chance of survival than those with obviously flawed understanding when random changes occur through mutation. So, given that our basic, survival-oriented cognition, something we're born with, isn't fundamentally wrong, and that there are verified points where our theory aligns with reality through testing, we can conclude that, at the very least, a large portion of our cognition is indeed true to the real world. These points of truth within our current framework are what give our present understanding a sense of absoluteness. Even if other systems with different frameworks exist logically, as long as ours aligns with this world, those other systems would be false in the real world because they either contradict or are irrelevant to ours. So, our future cognition may expand on this framework by adding new layers, but a full shift to a different framework, a true paradigm shift, is unlikely. If we question the foundational concepts of our cognition, we can't avoid the shift to a different framework. So this would remain within the realm of logic or philosophy, rather than leading to meaningful discoveries in the real world. This universe is based on binary oppositions, so a ternary opposition would be false. In the logical realm, there may be countless bubbles, but in the real world, our bubble holds true, so all others are false. The fundamental concept is absolute. Does our journey end here?
No, it isn't. Because the answer to which cognition is true to the real world doesn't have to be limited to one being right and the other wrong. There's another possibility, both could be true at the same time. Let's look back at our past. The worldviews of earlier human civilizations are the only other cognitive systems we can access today. The flat Earth theory, the geocentric model, fixed space, and absolute time were all brought up as examples of incorrect cognition at the start. But let's pause for a moment and think, were they truly wrong? It's true that these frameworks contradict our current understanding. The Earth is round, and it isn't the center of the universe. But did people of the past genuinely see the world incorrectly? Was their cognition really at odds with the real world? From today's viewpoint, yes, it seems that way. But what about from the viewpoint of those times? If you were living in the past, with your viewpoint fixed to one location on Earth, could you really confirm that the Earth is round, or that up and down are relative concepts? From that viewpoint, there's no real difference between seeing Earth as flat or as round. Within that field of view, wouldn't it make sense to see up and down as absolute? Conversely, in the distant future, imagine that due to the rapid expansion of the universe and the limitation of the speed of light, the observable region of the universe is reduced to just a single point on Earth. For beings born in that era, would it hold any meaning to view Earth as round or directions like up and down as relative? In that universe, wouldn't up, down, actually become absolute concepts? Similarly, back in the days when Earth was the only planet we could observe as solid body, or in the future when Earth will be the only planet in the observable universe, would Earth appear to be moving, and would it even matter? If your field of view is limited to just Earth, from that viewpoint, it makes no difference whether you see Earth as moving or as stationary with everything else moving around it. Describing Earth as the center of the world shouldn't pose any issues. In fact, it's more natural. What underlies these reasons is the frame. Their view of the world was limited, constrained by the boundaries of what they could observe. Therefore, their entire worldview was actually just a restricted portion of reality. The real world for humanity has always been not the entirety of reality but a framework with a limited frame. Within that frame, their cognitive system was, in fact, true in the real. And even today, these systems remain true when applied within their corresponding frames. For instance, the flat Earth theory is a worldview within a framework limited to what could be seen with the naked eye up to the horizon. In this view, the flat world and absolute up and down could remain logically consistent. Any issues, like the edge of the Earth or what supports it, lie beyond the horizon, essentially outside this framed world and therefore irrelevant. Whatever up or down may exist beyond that horizon is irrelevant to this internal view. It's a separate, unconnected concept, and macro and micro-scale laws or adjustments that extend beyond the range observable by the naked eye are unrelated to this worldview. In this way, the flat Earth system is a consistent cognition corresponding to this frame. Similarly, the geocentric theory is a true system corresponding to the frame of the Earth's scale, making consistent worldview within this region. And this frame isn't just about physical distance. Reality is multifaceted, depending on the range of numbers, levels of complexity, the aspect of the world we focus on, or the subject that we look at closely, each creates a different frame. Newtonian mechanics, Euclidean geometry, and various cultural or religious worldviews each align with different regions of reality. And in their respective frames, they can each be simultaneously true. Thus, when reality is framed in this way, systems that contradict our current framework can still be true alongside it, simultaneously as our own framework is true. Up to this point, we've explored past worldviews, but now we must consider that our current worldview, too, is bound by a frame. If there were physical laws on a much larger scale than general relativity, or forces, entities, and structures that operate only on a grander scale far beyond our observable universe, would these have any relevance to the current framework? Conversely, if there were laws on even smaller scales than quantum mechanics, or concepts, information, processes, and worlds that existed only in regions smaller than the Planck scale, would they have any effect on our current framework? Or, if there were different laws, particles, or a unique spacetime within black holes, would these change our current framework in any way? Or the regions beyond the edge of the observable universe? Or the period before the Big Bang? Or aspects of the world unconnected by causality to the side we observe? These are areas outside our current cosmology, mathematics, perception, and all of our systems. No matter what we hypothesize to exist there, internal cognition system remains unchanged. Whatever these regions may be, they have no relationship to our current worldview, because they are outside the scope of what our framework describes. In this way, a frame that limits us to a certain range certainly exists even now, and what we currently regard as the entire real world is, in fact, only a restricted domain within this frame. In Chapter 1, we saw that outside of our own cognitive system frame, entirely different systems, rooted in completely separate foundations, can also be valid at the same time. In this chapter, we explored their truth in relation to reality and saw that different cognitions can each be true simultaneously within their respective frames of the real world. We also realized that, just like past worldviews, our current worldview is just another framework. So even if our current cognition is accurate and its worldview feels complete, it's still possible for entirely new framework to emerge in the future, along with new cognitive system and new worldview. It might seem to us now that there's nothing beyond the boundaries of our current framework of reality. Even if there is, it might feel like a meaningless, irrelevant realm that has nothing to do with us. But that's exactly how people in the past felt too. There's no reason anymore to assume that logic and reality itself ends at the edges of our current framework. Beyond it, there should be an expansive, unknown world waiting to be discovered.
Let's not forget, it has never been the world that was limited, but our own eyes. The world has always extended beyond the reach of our vision. What might the world beyond our limited view look like? The answer is, anything is possible. For unconnected areas outside of the field of our view, it can be in contradiction with ours at all. Consistency only matters within the frame, and if the frame is separate, that region can be a completely different reality altogether. A separate scope of vision like this occurs when viewing the world from an entirely different viewpoint whose point is itself different from the present point. And the point of viewpoint is exactly what we've been exploring, the root of our cognition. Therefore, if we discover a new root, we get a new point of view, and its new cognition can view entirely new realm of reality. For example, consider the system rooted in the ternary opposition we've explored so far. If it logically holds, then the cognition it produces could be just as true as our current cognition. The ternary opposition world it envisions wouldn't be a false view but could actually represent another real aspect of reality. In fact, at that point, genuinely exist in the real world. In logical possibilities, there are countless bubbles of systems built on entirely different foundational concepts. Each of these viewpoints would have its own unique view of the world. Since these visions exist outside one another's frames, they can be completely different from each other and still be true simultaneously. And being outside the frame doesn't have to mean physically far away, it could be right next to us. Let's imagine a possible scenario where the real world isn't the orderly place we perceive it to be but rather an infinite, chaotic sea of information. Our intelligences, however, are limited, constrained by finite resources, meaning we're incapable of grasping that chaos in its entirety. As a result, we're forced to select, filter, and compress information into simpler, more manageable forms. What if our cognitive systems are essentially the methods we use to perform that compression? If that's the case, then our view will inevitably lose information. And depending on what we choose to focus on and how we compress the information, entirely different versions of the world could emerge for us to see. When it comes to cognitive selection, it might feel like the cognition shaped by evolution, the one our brains have now, is somehow special. But among the countless possible cognitions that correspond to various frames, evolution selects only one suited to the everyday scale of its time. This is because smaller frame and simpler cognition require less brain energy. That's why our brains recognize the Earth as flat, perceive the ground as stationary, and imagine the world based on absolute space and time. But these are merely products of natural selection operating on past, everyday scales. They're no longer special. In the future, humanity's everyday scale will be unimaginably larger than it is now. The cognition our brains hold today, shaped by evolution, is something we'll eventually outgrow. Because of this, others, like extraterrestrial life or future AI, might have completely different viewpoints from ours. For example, self-evolving AIs that we don't interfere with could view new aspects of the world from a pure standpoint, free from the biases shaped by our theories of evolution and brain structure. Similarly, a quantum computer, with a brain based on quantum uncertainty, might see something like ternary opposition as a more natural way to describe the world, because, while our current brains rely on neurons or transistors that operate in a binary mode, either on or off, a quantum computer's brain is built on quantum states, which include on, off, and their superposition. These are just a few examples of how a new viewpoint could exist. There can be countless possible scenarios where we see a vision of the world outside of ours. And if it actually happens, it probably won't be a scenario pieced together from concepts within our current framework, like the ones we discussed earlier. Instead, it'll come from completely unknown theories beyond our understanding. Doubting all of your own thoughts. Questioning the very foundation of your current cognition. Searching for systems built on entirely different roots. Considering bubbles of other mathematics. An example of other opposition compared to binary opposition. Seeing outside the boundaries of our frame. Getting other frameworks. Seeking out others. All of these mean the same thing. Everything we've discussed so far comes down to a single goal: the discovery of another viewpoint. This is the single most important thing for humanity. The shift from seeing the Earth as flat to seeing it as a sphere happened when two viewpoints from different points on Earth were compared. To move to a world where the Earth rotates and revolves around the Sun, it wasn't enough to rely solely on the Earth's viewpoint. We needed other points, such as different celestial bodies. Because our bodies have two eyes, our vision works by comparing two two-dimensional sights from different positions, allowing us to perceive in 3 dimensions. When we only have one viewpoint, we can't distinguish between what's absolute, independent of the point of this viewpoint, and what's relative, changing with points. At that time, this vision of the world is tied to the one accidental point we're seeing it from. So, a single viewpoint is always limited by the particular point it originates from, and as a result, it has a restricted field of vision, essentially, a frame. When we gain 2 viewpoints on a certain aspect, our vision is freed from that point, allowing us to see it from higher. Throughout history, humanity has discovered different points of view on various aspects, and through this, we've achieved broader and higher view of the real and logical world. Even now, our view undeniably has a fixed point. The root of our cognition is the absolute point lies at the base of all the views we've had so far. If we could discover or invent a new viewpoint rooted in something entirely different, we wouldn't just transcend our current cognition but the framework of cognition itself. This would grant us a new level of vision, unprecedented, boundless, and transcendental. We would obtain a new level of eye, one that allows for an unimaginably vast and transcendental view compared to anything we've had before. At that moment, framework would be freed from frame. Mathematics would break free from a bubble. The vision of world would free from cognition. Thinking would escape the confine of logical systems. We would gain unlimited logic, boundless mathematics, and truly free thought, enabling us to see an unrestricted universe.
When the current worldview, this our universe, is discussed, it's always described with grandeur, brilliance, and magnificence, but no one ever talks about its smallness, limitations, or dullness. Let's be honest, this universe is trash. The tactic for introducing cosmology is always the same. First, they throw out some ridiculously large number about the universe. It stuns your thinking and tricks you into believing it's something endless. But these numbers mean nothing. For instance, the number of ways to shuffle a deck of cards is approximately 8 times 10 to the power of 67. So what? That emerges is only emerges when compared to the thinking capacity of the current human brain. It's nothing more than a feeling. Next, some sparkly visual or stunning image designed to appeal to our sense of beauty appear, and they go on about how grand and majestic this universe is. If it's a video, soon enough some emotional or mysterious background music starts to play. The universe is silent. Finally, they'll top it off with some dramatic line of poetry, written long ago by human, of course. It's all garbage. No bits hold any real meaning, including those in this video. This is clearly a universe built just by human. These expressions that appeal to human emotions are just noise. The awe, beauty, grandeur, worship, reverence, and profound emotional impact. These were felt just as strongly when people believed in a flat earth, a geocentric universe, or all other widely accepted worldviews throughout history. These elements are used to make the model more powerful as a meme, and can be dangerous enemies that hinder our progress by reinforcing and fixing the current view. They make us believe that this world is as great as it could possibly be, limitless and endless, when in reality it's finite and bounded. We must not forget that our current worldview is just one point in the ongoing flow of change. The perspective we used to have is not one of awe and admiration, but rather to sit calmly on something that, like past worldviews, needs to be renewed and changed. Let's be ready to let go of this universe at any time.
The first thing to address about when looking at this universe is how small it is. Its size is just a mere 93 billion light-years in diameter. Due to the speed of light, our universe is confined to this limited distance. Everything beyond is an outside realm, disconnected from us, with no exchange of information, and irrelevant. The area within this boundary is all we can currently observe, and when we refer to the universe, we're usually speaking about this restricted region. In this way, our universe is constrained by its scale of size. Our game map has edges. Within this narrow playable world, there are only about 100 billion galaxies. In a single galaxy, there are only anywhere from 10 billion to several trillion stars, which means the total number of stars in our universe is only less than 10 to the power of 23. So far, we haven't found any extraterrestrial life or traces of other civilizations, but with only 10 to the power of 23 possible star systems, it's hardly surprising that we might be the only civilization to have emerged within this limited number of chances. On the other hand, even if we try to manage within this limited region by focusing on smaller scales, we run into another boundary, the uncertainty of quantum mechanics. This means there's a hard limit to how small things can get. When we zoom in too far, things quickly blur, and we lose the ability to give them structure or meaning. Beyond a certain point, they become unobservable and carry no information that's relevant to us. Thus, if we try to go above the realm of everyday scales, we're restricted by the speed of light. If we go below, we're bound by quantum uncertainty. These upper and lower limits act as a frame, confining our current world to just a tiny range of spatial scales. Next, this worldview is also limited in terms of time scale. On the time axis, the past is restricted by the Big Bang Theory. The past in this world only goes back 13.7 billion years. Anything before that is considered beyond the world, and time itself is seen as not existing before that point. On the other hand, the future is limited by the increase in entropy. Eventually, the universe will fall into thermal equilibrium and become complete chaos. Beyond that, no meaningful information will remain. In this way, this worldview has an inevitable end. The time left until that end is only a fleeting and tragically short 10 to the power of 10 to the power of 26 years. Our world is confined to a brief moment, bounded by its beginning and end. We're trapped in a small frame, both in space and time. Only the inside of this frame is our world. This frame also exists in terms of force scale. There's a limit to the range of forces that can exist in our universe. In our universe, if the density of force exceeds a certain threshold, a hole forms, and that region of space-time effectively exits the boundaries of this universe. Black holes are like holes in our world, regions disconnected from the rest of the cosmos. Since nothing inside them can exchange information with our universe, they, like the regions beyond the observable universe, are considered outside our world and irrelevant to us. The problem is that such holes appear almost immediately whenever we attempt to push beyond the everyday range of forces. When it comes to intelligence, whether it's through neurons or CPUs, expanding the size too much causes a slowdown in information exchange due to the speed of light. To increase thinking speed, the brain's volume needs to be as large as possible while remaining within a small area. In other words, its density has to be maximized. Thus, if intelligence reaches a certain limit, it would collapse into a black hole and effectively disappear from this universe. In this way, there's an upper limit to the intelligence that can exist in this world. We either turn into black holes and vanish, or we stay stupid. Similarly, the scale of structures is also strictly limited. For example, if we tried to build something about 4 billion times the size of the sun, it would collapse into a black hole, even if its density were lower than Earth's atmosphere. We can only create small things or black holes. The most terrible limitation is energy. As the scale of any technology increases, the energy required also rises. However, energy, too, quickly collapses into a black hole if it surpasses a certain limit. We're forced to keep our energy usage within that boundary. For example, the maximum energy that can exist within a space the size of Earth without forming a black hole is only about 3.9 times 10 to the power of 50 joules. This means that even if we wanted to achieve next-level technologies like time travel, space drives, or creating new universes, the amount of energy needed to make them possible would immediately collapse into a black hole and exit this world. As a result, we can have only eco-friendly, energy-saving, and weak technologies. This universe is small, fragile, and heavily constrained by physical limits. So, what if we decided to create a larger, limitless virtual world and move there instead? Unfortunately, even in this case, we run into restrictions on scale. We can't pack more information into a space than what a black hole would allow, and even if we turn the entire observable universe into a black hole, we could get only about 1.6 times 10 to the power of 122 bytes. Any amount of data exceeding this limit is simply impossible in this world. Our universe has a storage limit, so even imagination, data, and virtual worlds are finite and small. We can only play a game within the tiny capacity of 1.6 times 10 to the power of 122 bytes. In this way, there's an upper limit to every kind of power we can have. This universe is like a thin sheet of tissue paper, apply even slightly stronger forces, and it tears, leaving a hole. If we try to do anything beyond gently brushing its surface, that action immediately escapes to the outside of this world. Our world is already confined to a small frame in space and time, but even within that frame, we're further restricted by another frame, the fragile nature of this universe, defined by the boundary of a black hole's event horizon. This fragility imposes even tighter limits on what's possible within this already tiny scale. As a result, in this universe, we can't live beyond 10 to the power of 10 to the power of 26 years old. Even if we continue to develop, our civilization can only extend to the limits of the observable universe at 10 to the power of 10 to the power of 26 years later. Turning the entire universe into a brain, using all observable regions to the limit where they would become black holes, and taking 10 to the power of 10 to the power of 26 years, equations we couldn't solve, thoughts we couldn't conceive, and imaginations we couldn't achieve under these conditions remain absolutely impossible. Thus, no matter how smoothly we progress in the future, our civilization will inevitably hit an unavoidable ceiling before long. Trapped within this frame, our future possibilities are closed off. You don't have infinite possibilities. No matter how far we go, we'll only be within this small, momentary, ephemeral world, an even smaller and more fleeting event. That's all we can ever be. As long as we stay in a worldview of this framework.
There is the beginning of the universe, the end of the universe, and something else. In dependency, there is inclusion and exclusion, and something else. In causality, there is cause and effect, and something. In logic, there is true, false, and something. In existence, there is being and non-being, and something. Now, having come this far, we can finally talk about what lies ahead. We don't need the mosaic filter anymore. Something like this, a new framework will be brought by AI or others in their future. And as we've seen, it could be true alongside ours, and correspond to another aspect of reality. So now, let's predict the even further future beyond that. Our civilization will soon acquire a new mathematical system based on a different route. This will lead us to gain a new cognition, a new logical system, a new worldview, and the next level of technology. At that point, we'll be able to get warp drives, because space won't just be far and near anymore. We'll be able to time travel, because time won't just be past and future anymore. We'll be able to make perpetual motion machines. We'll be able to be amortal, because entropy won't only increase and decrease anymore. We'll be able to create a universal printer. We'll be able to create a complete backup of our entire civilization, because data won't just be more or less anymore. We'll be able to build hyper-intelligent computers that far surpass superintelligence, because density won't just be high or low anymore. We'll be able to create entirely new materials that have never existed in the universe before, because the component won't be only matter or antimatter anymore. We'll be able to build utopias inside black holes, because infinity won't be an uncomputable number and zero won't be an indivisible one anymore. We'll be able to construct structures beyond the observable universe. We'll be able to construct blank technology smaller than a photon. Because size won't just be big or small anymore. We'll be able to observe the outer universe beyond the 45 billion light-year radius for the first time. Because speed won't just be fast and slow anymore. We'll be able to observe the microscopic world beyond the Planck scale and surpass the uncertainty principle. Because probability won't just exist between 0 and 1 anymore. We'll be able to create new dimensions. Because dimension won't just be higher or lower anymore. We'll be able to communicate with ourselves in parallel worlds on different timelines. We'll be able to interfere with our past. Because causality won't just be between causes and effects anymore. We'll be able to born something from nothingness. We'll be able to turn everything into nothingness. Because existence won't just be between being and non-being anymore. As a result, we'll finally be able to freely design things. We'll travel to any time, space, dimension, or scale we want. All of these things will be achieved in the near future. And of course, our civilization won't stop at this humble level. These technologies up to this point are predicted to become possible by adopting the vision of a new viewpoint. And as we've seen, when we gain a new point of viewpoint, it won't just end with having one more vision added. What's important is having two differing points of viewpoint. By merging the new vision with our own, our sight is freed from those fixed points, and a transcendence to a higher view occurs. In the future from there, we will have an unlimited mathematics, not this mathematics, not even new mathematics, but the entire mathematical world that extends endlessly outside the bubble. We'll have unlimited eyes, free from the framework of math, cognition, and logic. At that point, we will be able to observe an unlimited universe for the first time, not a small one confined by a frame like the universe of our current worldview, but the complete entirety of the cosmos itself, independent of any viewpoints of observers or logic. And anymore, there will be nothing in the cosmos that can limit us. Time assembly will be invented. Circular Mobius space will be invented. Cosmic singularity motion machines will be invented. Infinity intelligence will be invented. A complete simulation of the entire cosmos will be invented. The parallel world printer will be invented. Dimensional weaving technology will be invented. Negative dimension will be invented. Infinity dimension will be invented. Imaginary dimension will be invented. The omega hole, a combination of a black hole and a white hole, will be discovered. The root of the cosmos will be discovered. The reverse cosmos will be discovered. Others will finally be discovered. The backup of the cosmos will be invented. Physics laws melting furnace will be invented. Paradox junction technology will be invented. Temporal ring will be invented. Controlled chaos will be invented. Causal loop will be invented. A technology that evolves the cosmos by dividing, mutating, and selecting will be invented. We'll obtain the completed ultimate cosmos. We'll finally be able to have true free will. We'll gain complete control over the entire cosmos. We'll have infinite space, allowing us to expand this cosmos as much as we want. We'll have infinite time, able to move the beginning and end of the cosmos wherever we please. We'll exist simultaneously in all infinite locations, times, dimensions, and parallel worlds. We'll be able to reshape every existence, fact, and concept within the cosmos however we want. We'll become the omniscient and omnipotent gods of this cosmos. All of these things will be achieved in the next era. And of course, our civilization won't stop at this humble level. Even at this higher view, there is still a fixed point of viewpoint. The cosmos itself. As beings that exist within this cosmos, we only know this cosmos, and we are bound by its components, such as spacetime, information, number, existence, and concept. But are those truly the absolute atoms of reality? Or are they unique to this particular cosmos? In another region, all of these things might not exist at all. Instead, it might be built entirely from something completely different, something absent from our cosmos. The cosmos is the next frame, and one day, we must free ourselves from it. Having obtained everything within the cosmos, we will strive to go even further, beyond this cosmos itself. And the way is the same. We'll search for another cosmos outside ours. We'll transform our entire cosmos into a single lens for that purpose. We'll be able to create a true void. We'll be able to observe other cosmoses made of different laws and concepts. Something to replace time will be discovered. Something to replace space will be discovered. Something to replace dimensions will be discovered. Something to replace information will be discovered. Something to replace logic will be discovered. Intercosmic communication will be invented. Transcosmic portals will be invented. We'll be able to travel freely to different cosmoses. At this point, we will become an intercosmic civilization. And, of course, we won't stop here. To break free entirely from the framework of cosmoses, we'll need to layer frames of different viewpoints, essentially colliding cosmoses together from the outside to shatter the bubble. Through this, we'll reach the outer world that lies beyond the cosmoses. The cosmos was infinite. This is what lies beyond infinity. We'll transcend time. We'll transcend space. We'll transcend dimensions. We'll transcend truth. We'll transcend existence. We'll become a transcendent cosmos civilization. We'll be able to fully control all cosmos from the outside. We will be able to create a new cosmos. Outer engineering, which constructs cosmos as atomic units, will be invented. World motion machines, capable of harnessing energy beyond infinity, will be invented. An ultimate intelligence built from cosmos as single bits will be invented. The entire body of the world will be discovered. The center of the outer world will be discovered. The code of the world will be discovered. We'll be able to access the foundation of the world. We'll be able to rewrite the program of the world. We'll be able to become the root of the world. The cause of dark matter will finally be explained. We'll obtain everything in the world. We'll be the universal, absolute presence in the entire world. In this way, we will become a world civilization. And of course, our civilization won't stop at this humble level. The next frame to beyond is the world itself. We'll be able to open the world whole. We'll reach the outside of this world. We'll discover other worlds. We'll be free from worlds. We'll gain power beyond the world. We'll ascend to a stage beyond the world. The world tree will be invented. Nirvana intelligence will be invented. The immutable origin will be invented. The no-motion machine will be invented. The clockwork fate will be invented. We'll be able to become non-existent. The archives and traces of others will be discovered. Soul will be invented. God will be invented. Flint will be invented. Torch will be invented. Will be invented. Will be invented. We'll become a civilization. And of course, our civilization won't stop at this humble level. We'll ascend to the next stage. We will be able to go to